Hi everyone, today we are looking at Chapter 9, Lessons 2 and 3, adding and subtracting fractions with like denominators. Your objective for today, students will be able to find fraction sums and differences when the fractions have like denominators. Let's get started. All right, so when we're talking about fractions that have like denominators, let's just recall that in a fraction, the number on top is called the numerator. The number on the bottom is called the denominator. So when we are adding and subtracting fractions that have like denominators, it means that their denominator or bottom number is the same. Okay, that's what like denominators mean. We're not talking like a boy or girl who says like all the time, like, oh my gosh, like that's the best. No, we're talking about fractions that have the same denominator. That's what like fractions are. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say that we have 3/12 plus 2/12. So in this problem or equation, I see that my denominators are both 12. They are the same. That means they are like denominators. And when we add and subtract fractions with like denominators, there's not too many steps involved. I'm going to model this so that you can see why there aren't that many steps. So I have my one fraction strip just to represent one whole, of course. And I want to take 3/12, 1/12, 2/12, and 3/12. And I want to add to that 2 more 12ths. Here's my 2 more 12ths. Now, because they're all the same denominator, they're the same color fraction tile, I can just combine them together and count the number of 12ths that I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when I add 3/12 plus 2 more 12ths, I get a total or a sum of 5/12. Notice that 5/12 is around half. Okay, it goes about halfway through that whole fraction bar. We talked about rounding fractions in our previous lesson, so it's always good to have that in the back of your head. 5/12 is about half. Now, can I simplify 5/12? You should always ask yourself that. Is there a times table other than 1 that gives me a 5 and a 12? Thinking, not my 2s, not my 3s, nope. 5/12 is already in simplest form because the greatest common factor of 5 and 12 is 1. All right, let's try another example. This time we're going to subtract some fractions together. Let's take the fraction 7/8 and subtract 3/8. All right. So I look at my denominator and I notice that they are the same. They both are 8. That's a common denominator or a like denominator. So that makes this problem have fewer steps. So let's model this. Here is my one whole, and I'm talking about eighths, so I'm using my eighths fraction tiles. I'm going to start by building 7/8. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, and 7/8. So you can see that 7/8 is almost one whole because one whole is 8/8. So if I were rounding 7/8, I'd round it up to a whole. Now this time I'm subtracting. I'm taking away 3 of those eighths pieces. So I'm looking for the difference between 7/8 and 3/8. So if I'm taking away 3 of my eighths pieces, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to remove these. Because they're all eighths, it's just as simple as taking away 3 of them. And what am I left with? 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8. So I'm left with 4/8. Notice that when we add and subtract fractions that have the same denominator, the denominator isn't changing. Look, we started with eighths, we took away eighths, and we're left with eighths. The only time we would see that denominator change is if we simplified it. Can we simplify 4/8? Well, here's 4/8. It looks like it's about a half. So I'm going to see if it's equal to a half because it looks pretty close to being a half. So I'm going to take my half fraction tile, and I notice it is. It's equivalent or equal to exactly 1/2. So how can I do that without the fraction tile? What's the greatest times table that gives me a 4 and an 8? Well, let me think. When I count by ones, of course, we know 1 always works. How about when I count by twos? 2, 4, 6, 8. I can divide these both by 2. Is there anything higher? Let's see. 3s won't work. 4s, 4, 8, 12, etc. I can divide these both by 4 and 2, but we would always pick the greater number to get to simplest form. I mean, you could use the other number. Oh, as I write it too. You could use 2. You would just have to take an additional step. So if I divide the numerator and denominator by the greatest common factor, I'll get simplest form. So let's see. 4 divided by 4 equals 1. 8 divided by 4 equals 2. And that's why 1/2 is the same amount of space as 4/8. So for this question, we took 7/8 and then we took away 3 of those eighths pieces and we were left with 4/8. And then we simplified to prove that 4/8 is exactly the same amount of space as 1/2. All right, I hope you found this video helpful. Just remember, when we add and subtract fractions that have the same denominator, a like denominator, the denominator does not get added together or subtracted. Oh, there's my little guy. He was creeping in. So we would hold on, Vinny. We would never do 8 minus 8 or 8 if this was addition, 8 plus 8. Okay, the denominator, if it's the same, will remain the same unless you simplify. You only would work with the top numerators. All right. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Mama,
wait.